Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. I'm David Hertel, filling in for Elias. Montreal renters are getting creative amid the crazy rise in prices. They're starting to apartment swap instead of finding new leases, as one of the only means by which they can have rental control over prices. The idea behind apartment swapping is that both parties mutually agree upon a transfer of two separate leases, but the price remains the same. To tell us more, I'm joined by Arnold Bennett, housing advocate. Arnold, great to have you on the program.
Nice to be here.
So, Arnold, tell me about the situation. How bad is it on the ground right now? Because we keep hearing about housing crisis. But you follow this on a daily basis. You see the examples. What's going on the ground here in Montreal?
There's a shortage, and there's a lot of rent gouging. And the rent gouging for new tenants is nothing new.
Mm-hmm.
They do have rights, by the way.
Yeah.
A new tenant who moves into a place could apply to the tribunal to reduce the rent if the increase is excessive, if they can find out what the previous rent was. So that's not impossible, but it's difficult, and a lot of people don't know their rights, and it's not done. So this lease swapping that you were talking about is nothing new. It's been done for many years, but it's complicated because you're trying to do two delicate operations at the same time instead of one delicate operation of assigning a lease.
Right. So tell me more about that. I mean, there's a lot of work because, again, I know we talk about rental registries, which still do not exist. So how you have to find somebody that is willing to transfer their lease to you, and they're willing to take on your lease. Is that it?
Yeah, I've seen that happen.
Okay,
as I said, it's messy.
Yeah.
But the most common situation is somebody wishes to leave, and they are willing to the technical term is assign their lease to you, which would be at the same rent, no change in conditions, and under the current law, the landlord cannot refuse without a serious reason. And there's well-established jurisprudence on that going back over 30 years. So the procedure is that you find a person who wants to take over the lease. You send a notice to the landlord saying, I want to assign my lease to name of person, current address, and we recommend giving good references and credit references, although this is not legally required, but it basically eliminates any ability of the landlord to claim that the person is not suitable. And then the landlord has 15 days to refuse with a serious reason. And if the landlord does refuse without a serious reason, that's where it starts to get a bit messy because the person who wants to assign the lease then must apply to the tribunal, what used to be the rental board, and ask for the tribunal to declare that number one, the assignment is valid, that number two, that the landlord's refusal is invalid, and then the person to whom they're assigning the lease can take over the lease. Now, the problem that we're having now is that the current government, the CAC, wishes to change the law so that the landlord can refuse lease assignment without a reason. And that's going to create a mess for a number of reasons. Number one, it eliminates this whole thing, which most often is used, by the way, not between strangers, but between friends and between non-cohabiting family members.
Right.
Okay? It can be done with strangers too, but it's more complicated because you have to find somebody and check them out. So if the landlord can refuse without having to give a valid reason, the person who wishes to leave, presumably, they can leave in the middle of the lease, which they can't at the moment. Okay, but the incoming person is blocked, and the landlord can rent to whoever they want and raise the rent whatever they want, unless the person finds out and takes them to the tribunal. Mm-hmm. Now, to me, the biggest problem, apart from the economic problem for tenants who are trying to find an affordable rent, is the discrimination factor. Because even though the law and the Charter of Rights prohibit discrimination in rental and in anything else, the practice is unfortunately very common. And assignment of lease prevents a landlord from being able to refuse people because of their race, because they have kids, because they have a lifestyle that the landlord doesn't agree with, or whatever. That would be eliminated, and discrimination would become even worse than it is now.
So complicated, to say the least, in the best of circumstances, Arnold. So are there any other strategies that you would advise people look into to try to control costs, the cost of their rent?
The whole section of the law regarding the right of a new tenant to have to obtain a revision of the rent. To have the rent fixed by the tribunal, if it's raised excessively compared to the previous tenant, still is in place. And for decades, tenant organizations have tried all kinds of things, particularly pass-your-lease campaigns, which unfortunately don't work too well. And people can check the tribunal, the judgments of the tribunal, to find out what the previous rent was, if there was a rent fixation by the previous tenant. If there wasn't, they don't have that recourse. Or here's what most people end up having, or they can do some detective work and locate the previous tenant and get a copy of their lease. Or the most common thing is people have to fly blind. If they've heard or they assume that they've been raised excessively and the previous rent's not marked on the back of the lease, which it's supposed to be, they can apply to the tribunal for this thing, wait for the notice of hearing, subpoena the landlord's rental records, and at that point they can prove their case, because the burden of proof under the current law is on the tenant. Now, you mentioned rental registries. Some municipalities, in fact, are establishing those.
Okay.
Montreal is talking about doing it. I don't know how well in effect it is. And private tenant organizations are trying to post the information online, which becomes more efficient. But certainly it's not in place in any way that people commonly know about it.
So, Arnold, if you were housing minister for a day, what would be priority one?
Well, number one, I would get rid of this awful idea of taking away the right to assign a lease, because the current housing minister has a background as a real estate flipper, and her attitude when asked about this is, oh, well, if people can't afford the rent, they should go and buy real estate.
Exactly, yes.
That's not exactly the most...
No, not very helpful.
It's in the same category as let them eat cake.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that has to change. And I should point out that the backlash, it doesn't only come from tenant organizations and the usual suspects. 13 Quebec municipalities have adopted resolutions demanding that Quebec change this policy. I've never seen that happen. When we were fighting condo conversions back in the late 80s, we did get Montreal, Côte-Saint-Luc, and Greenfield Park to take very strong positions. Nobody else did. Now we're talking the 13 biggest municipalities in Quebec. Right. So at some point, Legault is going to have to pull the plug, I hope. And we're going to see this fall, because that's when the legislation is supposed to come to the National Assembly.
And we will follow that very closely. Arnold, thank you very much for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Arnold Bennett is a housing advocate.